afternoon. This is Jim Conlan here from RCB Radio Sport Ireland, live at 92.5 and 94.8 FM, and online at www.rcb.ie. I'm delighted this evening to have a special guest with us, reigning world champion, a champion in the world champion in the triple jump, four-time world champion, two Olympic gold medals, the reigning Olympic champion, and the reigning world champion, the one and only Christian Taylor. Christian, a pleasure to speak to you today. And Christian, before I start 2020 in your long established career from being an amateur to a professional, have you ever seen the like of it?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, first and foremost. Thank you for all the listeners. But yeah, of course, 2020 was a very challenging year in itself, on and off the track. I think the mental fatigue was actually more difficult than the physical aspect of it. But to hit on what you said, I've never experienced. I don't think anybody, in their lifetime have experienced something quite like this. But we're rolling with the punches, and we're picking ourselves back up and rebuilding, not from where we were, but in going into the new normal, going into the next phase.
And I suppose, Christian, if I can take you back from the start, growing up in Georgia, you had your parents are from Barbados. You sort of grew up sort of there with sort of great sort of roots and stuff like that. A renowned sort of young sort of football star, played football at your school level. Was football the original ambition for you growing up as a child, or were you just a good all-rounder? Did you play basketball? Did you play other sort of sports? And how did you start to come across athletics? Was the first dream that one of being the American footballer or the basketball star?
Yeah, so with as you said, my parents are from Barbados, and with this English influence, it was either cricket or football. But I really took to football and really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the team aspect. I enjoyed the traveling. I enjoyed just learning about myself, pushing myself as hard as I could, but then also having someone to keep me accountable, and I really enjoyed this aspect of it. And I played all the way till I was about 17, 18. But then it got to the point where at the top level, I was, or top level of my level, I started to become very frustrated because though I wanted people to hold me accountable, when I was doing the same, I felt that, they were really not holding their weight. And this is when I started to lean more towards the individual sport. And that is what really drew me into athletics, because I thought what I put in is what I get out. And at some point I have to have a certain level of self-discipline that's going to get me to attain the goals that I've set for myself. And so, yeah, I really played basketball, golf, tennis, athletics, football, American football. I tried it all, and I was very fortunate to have parents that gave me this opportunity. But in the end, as I said, really the fact that the individual sport gave me the opportunity to whatever I put in, that's what I got out. That's what really attracted me to it, and I just continued to pursue it.
So you were really a competitive teen, so a very sort of ambitious type of guy, even growing up, that you always had that sort of competitive sort of streak in you.
Yeah, I always had that competitive nature. I mean, I've got a younger sister also, and so though I strive to be the best example I can be for her, there was not a time that we weren't competing to be our parents' favorite. There wasn't a time we weren't competing against each other. Whether it was who was fastest up the stairs, who was faster or stronger to do anything. And so I think really just in the household, this was really ingrained. Try to be the best at whatever you're doing, and this carried over into my athletics.
Yeah, and you mentioned your athletics, and you mentioned trying all sorts of sports growing up. When was the first time? Obviously, you probably had school competitions where you ran, and you probably had school competitions where there was a variety of different disciplines in terms of track and fields. But I presume you probably started off first of all probably as a runner, were you, or in terms of sprint, 100, 200s, and that sort of starting off, was it running that sort of got you into athletics?
I actually started with cross country. Yeah, so believe it or not, I was trying the distance, and it was because my football coach told me that I need to do something to keep me in shape in the off season. And so when yeah, were just going to school or going to camp or whatever, my coach said go do cross country, get in shape, and then bring that fitness back to the pitch. But I found that I do not have the lung capacity to be a distance runner, nor do I have this mindset. For me, it just felt like endless running. But I do have such a great respect for those that can do. For me, if you can do anything over 800 meters, you got me, because I really, it's hard for me to fathom passing the line one time, let alone two times and beyond. And so yeah, I can say that I've tried it, and this is how I ended up running now 40 meters for my life. Yeah, sprinting down the runway. I don't experience elastic, and it's a completely different challenge. But no, I did start with running in the woods, actually.
Okay. So when did that sort of progression sort of made its way, or were you sort of, or someone spotted you doing these long distance running and brought you aside and said, "Listen, Christian, I think there'll be opportunities for you in terms of short running, sprinting, or do you get involved in a club, or were you ambitious that your parents, listen, this is something I want to pursue, and you sort of looked at your options and said, yeah, I might do the sort of short sprints and then see what might come about of that."
Yeah, so basically, when my cross country coach saw me struggling so bad in these races, he just actually told me that maybe I should look for shorter distances, because he saw that I was very good at once the gun went off, I was very good at that first 100-meter dash. And then when it came to 20 minutes later, I would fall off, and so he would say maybe you should look into actually athletics, as opposed to the cross country side. And so then I spoke to my parents, and they told me basically to research and find which club track that would really support this dream at the time. And yeah, I went out to the club and saw everyone training and was a bit intimidated at first, because I thought, yeah, these guys have really been doing this from a young age, and they would have the experience, and yeah, I was, I saw the speed that they were generating so quickly, and I did not have that fast twitch makeup at this time, and so I was very intimidated. But with time, I found my groove, and yeah, really dove in.
And I suppose, Christian, before the age of 16 or 17, had you ever tried a long jump, or was that very much later? Had you actually ever done a sort of long jump before the age of 17? Even
Yes,
in,
yeah. So I was really from 13, 14, I was really doing everything, as I said. So for my middle school, for my secondary school, we had track and field, we had basketball, we had football. So I was playing everything, but was not specialized in anything. So with every season, I was really trying to make the most of that season, but it was not that any carried over to the next.
and what was your sort of first memories of actually trying out the sort of the long jump and the sort of triple jump? Were you sort of taken back? Did you sort of feel a sense of excitement straight off the bat? I know it's in an individual sport, and sometimes in terms of training, it can be sort of a bit lonesome in terms of sprints. You have someone up against you on your shoulder, egging you, and you're trying to beat that sort of person. Again, in a long jump or a sort of a triple jump, it's you and your own sort of mentality in terms of practice and training. Did you get a sense of enjoyment from it at a young age?
I would say it was actually very challenging, especially the triple jump. So for the long jump, it was really a lot of fun. Yeah, I was tall. I was much taller than my classmates, and had good speed. So I was quite successful at the long jump because of just those two factors, but really didn't have the technique. With the triple jump, it was very intimidating, because to see where I had to start from and then somehow find a way to make it to the pit, yeah, that was difficult at the beginning. But again, because of my size, I was one of the only ones in my class that could make it to the sand. And so once I got over that barrier, um, that fear factor, then I was able to really progress, with leaps and bounds, and my success in the area grew.
And I suppose if we can fast forward now to 2007, you became a world sort of youth champion. And that was sort of the first breakout of Christian Taylor, obviously in the US sort of scene in terms of that, but also on a global level, it marked you down as one with sort of great potential and sort of one for the future. What we, I know 2007 is going back sort of 13 years now, but have you any sort of memories of that sort of year? Did you feel that you were coming into something good? Did you feel that you were blossoming? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think from at 17 in 2007, I did not think, I would be where I am today. I did not think that the future would be so bright. I thought maybe there was an opportunity to get a scholarship, and go to university, continue to run on a college level, but I knew that I had a lot of growing to do. I mean, at 17, I think I won the World Youth at 1596, so to think that I still had 2 meters to come, from 2007 to 2011. I knew there was a lot of growth that needed to be done, but at this time, again, the focus was really fun. I was still playing football at this time, so it's not that I was all in with athletics, and I was really just a typical almost American kid.
Yeah, and I suppose, Christian, if I can jump forward now, 2009, you attended University of Florida. You were scouted by Coach Rana Ryder, and what I suppose you were well sort of touted. What made you go to sort of Florida in terms of picking that, and what sort of influence had Coach Rana Ryder in your decision?
Yeah, so it was really my parents that felt the pull to the University of Florida. I went to many of my college visits and just partied and had, I was 17, so I was looking for a good time. And my parents were really the one that were saying, no, this is about higher education. This is about betting yourself and putting yourself in a position that afterwards you can decide, do I pursue athletics or do I go into the work field? And when I went to the University of Florida, I actually did not go out. I did not have a typical college visit. And my parents were actually very pleased with this because they thought this is a place where I would be safe. This is a place where I can really focus on my athletics and my academics. And so they essentially made the decision for me. But once I moved onto campus, it was really the opportunity that I had phenomenal roommates and really just kind of bought in. Coach Mouse was and still is an incredible, influence in my life, an incredible, part of my life. And from the very first day I came to the locker room, he set all the guys down and really said that his goal was that, we need to graduate. We need to make this a priority, but secondly, he wants to get the best out of us from the athletic side. But lastly, that he strives to help us become good gentlemen, good members of society. And this really always stuck with me because I thought, he genuinely cared for our well-being. He genuinely cared, to take us in, to mold us and to make us better people. And so that was really special. But yeah, to go on to Reina, we're still together, now so many years later. And to be very honest, at the beginning, we actually did not get along at all, because I was really, I found myself very frustrated. He was so into the sports science, so into almost detail oriented. And this drove me crazy because I just said, let me know what I need to do to win. And he just had books on books and all these numbers and measurements of how I can improve 1% every year and all this stuff. But this meant nothing to a 17-year-old kid, and so now, I do appreciate that we can have this relationship and grow together and all the work that he's put in. But at this time, we actually didn't even click from the beginning.
Yeah, and I suppose that Christian, 2009 to 2011, 2 years space, from going from college in 2009 to being a world champion in 2011. That's a short span, I suppose, in an athletics person's career. does 2 years seem an awful long time when you're sort of competing in events on a continuous basis? Because what struck me was that 2009, you mentioned that you were still maybe in your early adolescence, and 2011, then 2 years later, you're world champion.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think in the college system, we're running every week. It's so different. Yeah, and I was really in the SEC. For me, this is the strongest conference in the nation. And I was really able to be in an environment, whether it was at Florida, with Will Clay, with Omar Craddock, um, with really, I had training partners that were the best athletes in the world. And then also when I went to competitions, I was jumping with the best athletes in the world. And so it was almost that mentality of iron sharpening iron, and everyone just pushing each other to really get the most out of it. But yeah, I would say in the end, it was just having the competitive opportunities. Week in and week out, I was doing relays. I was really maxed out, and I was in the best shape of my life. And I think this was such a big influence on helping my growth so quickly.
And I suppose, Christian, those 2007, those world, 2011, those what sort of world championships. I know you've been to another sort of three since 2011, and successful in all of them. But was 2011 probably the hardest one in terms of your first world championship? Was there a bit of nerves? Was there a bit of that butterflies in the sort of stomach sort of feeling, that sense of anticipation that I want to reach the sort of the top of the ladder as such? And you're sort of, you said about that competitive nature, wanting to be the sort of best. Did you feel a sort of great sense of weight off your shoulders when you reached the peak and you got your first world championship in 2011?
To be honest, actually 2011, I don't want to say was my easiest, but it for sure did not have the pressure that many of the other ones did. Coming out of, I was 21 years old. I still had one more year of university, and I had everything to gain and nothing to lose. So there was really essentially no pressure on my shoulders. I can go out there and compete, and even the media was saying, to be so young and to be on the world stage, that I should just go and have a good experience. I should go and just learn and appreciate being with the best athletes in the world. So I don't even think anyone expected me to come out with the win. But for sure, I would say 2016 was the hardest championship that I've ever had, because again, the bar was set so high. Now the expectations were, gold or bust, and that was quite difficult for me.
And I suppose, Christian, I suppose I'm just going to go back now in 2012. It was sort of, the Olympics for you was a sort of an interesting experience, given that you spent maybe half that year before the Olympics began actually living in London, because your coach moved over and got involved with the British sort of Olympic team. You're used to warm weather sort of training, sort of in Florida, sort of nice sun, being able to body condition the moisture, the air, sort of getting yourself up to terms of altitude and stuff like that. You're coming to London, England, you're living there, rain, wet, sort of cold, sort of conditions, very sort of different from what you're used to training day in, day out. Was that sort of a risk for you going with your coach? Was it sort of a daunting experience going away from the norm that was very successful? And given that it was your first Olympics and it was Olympic year, I suppose athletes have these sort of set sort of training regimes and set sort of preparations, and they don't like to break a sort of winning habit. Was it a big gamble in one sense?
Yeah, so Loughborough, I have to clarify, Loughborough is a lot different than London. I really felt like I was in the middle of nowhere. This move was very challenging because at this time I was living in Daytona Beach. So as you said, the climate was ideal. Somebody being from the South to be in the hottest place in the US, it was perfect. Everything lined up perfectly, and then I did make the decision to follow my coach, to the UK, and this was a struggle. But I would say yes, climate was an influence, but where we were training has a phenomenal indoor center, so this wasn't too bad. I think the hardest strain was actually being so far from my family. because this is and it was very difficult for me, because they really fuel me. They really give me so much energy, and I said that I really strive to be the best example I can be for my sister, and then to be so far away and not be able to kind of do life with her. This was a difficult pull, but in the end, nothing happens without reason, and I just took it as a learning opportunity, and went all in, and a few years later got to move to Holland, which was actually a breath of fresh air.
And I suppose, Christian, you mentioned in terms of living in sort of England, and I suppose athletes want to sort of feel relaxed, feel at ease, feel not the weight of the world on their shoulders going into sort of Olympics. And you're there, you're sort of homesick, you're sort of missing sort of family, you've got things on your mind, sort of distractions as such. So the mental challenge of it, the London Olympics, was that extremely hard for you? Did you not sort of enjoy the whole experience in terms of the lead up to the Olympics? Obviously, you enjoyed the end result, but the whole London Olympics sort of experience was a mixed bag of emotions for you.
Oh, no, no, no. London was a dream come true. So I was not going to allow anything to take this away. Yeah, I really made the most of this, and I think it was an added bonus because I was very familiar with the area, the surroundings. I had a lot of friends, I had family in the area. So no, London 2012 was fantastic games for me.
And it sort of led to one of your rivals at the time in terms of he was a sort of on the top of the scale at that time, Phillips Daiwo. And I suppose in terms of that, he was sort of at his peak around that age, and probably just maybe dropping that 1 or 2% when you were probably sort of shooting up. So it was a case of him trying to stay at the top, and you were the young pretender trying to take away the sort of glory from a sort of a fan's favors or such.
Yeah, I'm extremely big fan of Phillips even to this day. I love what he's done. Uh, I mean, just his whole swagger. It's beyond the jump, but I love the energy that he brought. I love the swag that he brought whenever he was jumping. The dyed hair, the piercings. He was really entertaining, and this is something that I try to put on my shoulders every day. Whenever I'm competing, I want to put on a show. I want to be memorable, and this is something that he did. But from the competitive side, I never almost let off the gas. I knew that if he was there to win. He was there to defend titles, and I needed to be in the best position, in the best shape possible to have a chance to beat him.
I suppose, Christian, I'm going to jump forward now to 2015 and to the Qatar track heat. I suppose this is probably renowned as one of those events in history in terms of your event. Is probably renowned as one of the most famous. Both yourself and Pichardo, both of you jumped for the first time in history over 18 meters. The first two guys to combined over sort of 18 meters, and it was sort of renowned in terms of its fascination because both guys were outdoing each other after each sort of successful sort of attempt. So in terms of that, was that a sort of in that sort of moments there when you're seeing someone that is stretching you to the max and you're trying to eke out those extra meters each time, is it sort of, do you think to yourself, do I have it in the body? Do I have it? You see him coming back and sort of bettering what you're doing time after time. Does it sort of rock you to one sense, or what goes through your head when you are really involved in a real sort of battle where someone is probably peaking at their sort of best, and you know that you have to sort of peak and probably outdo your peak to get over them?
Yeah, for me, this is what competition is all about. This is what being an athlete is all about. You have those that will really step up or those that will back down. I mean, there's no middle. And for me, I told you I've got this competitive nature that runs through me since childhood. So I love that in 2015, Pichardo came out blazing, and he we had the farthest competition in history, you know, 2 people over 18 meters, which was phenomenal. But at the same time, you know, I lost this competition. And so I felt, you know, I went back to the hotel with a major personal best, but feeling like the biggest loser. And the competitive nature in me said, you know, this fight is not over. I have the entire season to redeem myself, which I did. I think I ended up jumping 18 meters 2 more times in that season because, you know, I just said, you know, I need to make the statement. To show him that, you know, I'm going to be the man to beat in Beijing. You know, and yeah, I really rode that wave, but you know, I'm never going to back down from a fight. You know, as long as I'm putting on spikes, I believe I'm the best man out there, and this is what Raina and I prepare for. So you know, this is for me what it's all about.
And you mentioned sort of Beijing coming in as a reigning sort of two-time world champion, reigning sort of Olympic sort of champion. Is it sort of those sort of early rounds? Are you just trying to sort of pace yourself to try and sort of leave an awful lot in the tank in terms of trying to just do enough to try and get through and sort of keep yourself, your body in the sort of the best sort of nick? Or do you go out with the sort of attitude, right, that I'm going to set the pace, or I'm going to set the standard even from the first rounds or stuff like that? Or you feel to yourself, well, if I make a successful sort of jump here, I know that this is going to carry me through. I can sort of relax in and save some for the business end of the competition.
Now, from the first jump, I'm all out. I'm 100%. I'm giving it my all. There's never any hold back for me. You know, for the qualifying round, maybe I played a bit safe just because I know I just need to do a 17-meter jump to get to the final. But once I'm in the final, it's guns ho. It's you know, we jump in the warm up. We sprint hard in the warm up. We have everything full throttle. So from the first jump, you know, it's guns blazing, and we're there to put on a show and to win. So you know, it's fortunate. I'm very blessed to be able to continue to progress and you know, at many times have my best jump on the fifth and sixth round. But you know, my goal, I mean, even in Rio, I won the Olympic Games on my first jump, you know, and so I come out there really giving it my all and just, you know, just almost being pleasantly surprised when it works out.
Yeah, you won the Olympics in Rio in your sort of first sort of jump, and that sort of Rio sort of experience as well. After coming out of that, retaining the sort of Olympics, was the drive, the burning ambition there to still go on? I suppose you're now a two-time Olympic champion, a two-time sort of world champion. You've sort of your status as the pound for pound, say, in your sport is sort of well sort of secure. Do you sort of go home then, do you sort of look in the mirror and you say, what have I left to sort of achieve in this sort of sport? What do I got to do? Or are you the type of person, Christian Taylor, that you look in the mirror each night and if the ambition is to be better tomorrow than what you are today or what you were sort of yesterday? Do you sort of strive? Is it a everyday sort of day sort of challenge? Do you sort of medals and sort of trophies, do they sort of less now and sort of your value? Is it all about sort of in bettering yourself in terms of how people will sort of remember you?
Yeah, so when I compete now, I don't even think about the accolades. I don't think about defending title. Every time I compete, I strive to be the best on this day. I'm trying to be the best all time. At this time, I'm 8 centimeters away from the world record. Yeah, so this drives me crazy. I don't need any additional driving forces or motivation. I'm second all time, and I really believe no one will remember me when I'm done because every time they talk about the triple jump, they talk about the world record holder, and you know, I am overshadowed. I am cast in Jonathan Edwards' shadow, and so for me, this is what drives me. I mean, I do a lot of mentoring with children, and they really inspire me, and they give me that added, you know, additional motivation. But you know, if there's no settle, there's no content in my attitude, my drive. You know, I'm there. I'm striving to be the best, and you know, hopefully surrounding myself with the best people, the best team. But I'm always going to give it my all, and when I get to the point where I'm there to just be in the mix, then, you know, it's time to hang it up. I don't plan to just be there for the fun of it. I'm there to be the best.
I suppose you mentioned Johnson Edwards sort of record. I suppose it's probably the one thing that's sort of haunting. You mentioned it's sort of haunting you at the sort of moment, in terms of it's probably the only thing that you've yet to achieve. But it probably, people will look at sport back through the last 30 years, and people said Michael Johnson's 400 meters record was untouchable. It was invincible. No one will ever go near it. And then Wade Van Niekerk did the impossible, what many people believe, when he broke that 400 meters. It was probably the highlight of the Olympics. He was probably, in terms of shock, he was just more delighted that he had beaten his boyhood dream, in terms of Michael Johnson, that rather than the gold medal. It was the idea that he was above Michael Johnson that sort of was more proud to him. And even Michael Johnson sort of applauded the fact that that weight was finally gone off his shoulders, that someone else had taken on that mantle. Is that the sort of feeling that you have when you see athletes do that, that you see these records that say, oh, they're unbeatable, they're untouchable, and then something like Johnson's record goes after like 20 years or something? Does that give you that belief that Edwards' record can go, and that you can take on the mantle and take that weight off Jonathan Edwards' shoulders, even though he's probably grasping it, he probably still wants to hold on to it?
Yeah, at the end of the day, records are made to be broken. And so at every record, someone's, you know, it's the record because no one has achieved this point. You know, and it, yeah, of course, it's very easy to say, wow, no one will beat this until it's beaten again. You know, at some point, we're human, and a human is the one that has did it, and it's very fitting that a human will be the one to break it. But you know, records are made to be broken, and as I said, I'm here because I believe I have the talent, the drive, the partnerships, you know, the training that is going to put me in the position to surpass this mark. But you know, I'm sure that from 2015 on, that, you know, Mr. Edwards really watched me. I'm sure I grabbed his attention, and he was able to say maybe this guy could pass it. You know, but I'm continuing to chase that every competition.
I suppose, Christian, just one or two things to sort of finish up. The Athletics Association 2019, something that you're heavily sort of involved in. It was a brainstorm idea of yours as well. I suppose it's independent of the IFF, in terms of the Athletes Association. You advocate for sort of athletes' sort of rights as such. And was that something, the politics of track and field, the sort of, in terms of the coming together as sort of forming a sort of a union, sort of something, that's something sort of, what sort of brought that on the radar for you? Was it own personal sort of experiences that made you sort of say, I want to get involved in this sort of adventure or such? Or did you feel, listening to other athlete stories, sort of grievances that were out there, that you felt that something else needed to be in the sort of mix, another sort of body as such, so that everyone can sort of be on a sort of level playing field?
Yeah, so the Athletics Association, the catalyst for it was the unfortunate decision of the Diamond League removing the 4 disciplines from the normal exhibition, the normal competition calendar. And I just got fed up with just hearing unfortunate news, hearing decisions being made, and athletes not having any influence with this. And this led me to really reach out to athletes globally and ask them if they would stand with me, because I'm sure I cannot be the only one that is frustrated from this. I was very fortunate to be able to really gather champions, Olympic, World, Diamond League, so all champions, and stand with me and say, you know, change needs to come. Our voice needs to be heard. We need to be part of the decision-making process. And obviously we gained a lot of traction very quickly. We, you know, due to social media, you know, it was really a spark that really almost created a giant fire. But we got World Athletics attention quite quickly, and we said, look, we're not trying to start a rebel group. We're not trying to be against you, but we want to be a part of it. We are a major stakeholder in our sport. We are an essential stakeholder, and to not even feel recognized, not to feel heard, it does not make sense. So we need to somehow be able to put ourselves in a position that we can be at the table, that we can be a part of the direction of which our sport is going to. And they obviously weren't too excited about this, but in the end, we said, as we've been identified as a major stakeholder, we need to have the deserved spot, and this is what we're continuing to fight for. This is what we're continuing to continue to use our voice, use our platforms, partner with those that believe in what we're fighting in. But ultimately, I was just frustrated with the lack of attention, the lack of respect that the athlete's voice had.
I suppose, Christian, one or two sort of things. I know I'm sort of stretching, but for the sort of last sort of 5 minutes or such, the Olympics last year, the decision. I know so much revenue is involved in the Olympics, and I suppose for a country that's holding it, they put so much investment in terms of structure, in terms of finances, in terms of sponsorship, marketing, and such. But as athletes, were you disappointed in terms of Tokyo that we all knew we were in the grips of a global sort of pandemic? It was clear to everyone that this wasn't going anywhere. But it's still in all the sort of decision to postpone the Olympics. It was left very late. Athletes that were left wondering sort of maybe to training on maybe for 2 or 3 months, when it was clear to everyone that probably it wasn't going to go ahead. And were you as an athlete, a top professional, were you sort of disappointed that that decision didn't come earlier, as such, to give athletes that sort of bit of respect? Because you were left on sort of tender hooks all the way up nearly to the bitter end, whether it was going ahead or not. And Japan, obviously, Tokyo, didn't want to give away what the current situation was in terms of the pandemic there, obviously, because there were still the investment that they pumped into the Olympics. So was that sort of a bit of a concern for you and your professional athletes that that decision came when it came, and it came so sort of late in the day?
Yeah, as you said, we were very frustrated with the timing of it all. We were really challenging them to make the decisions much quicker, because there was so much on the line. People were, I mean, we were were trying to train when we were in complete lockdowns, but the thought was that we still had Olympic Games coming, and we were willing to do whatever it took. It was not a safe thing that we had to do, but at the end, it's the Olympic Games. Maybe it comes once in a lifetime, and this was very difficult. And hoping that this year things are very different, but that was a very challenging period for sure.
And I suppose, lastly, for me, the Olympics this year, I suppose, if it does go ahead, and please God, it does go ahead, and more likely, there could be a possibility where, Christian, that you could have sort of very limited crowds at this year's sort of Olympics, that many people from all different nations probably with the concern of COVID restrictions probably won't sort of travel as such. So an awful lot of events might be streamed. So in terms of having that sort of support, or you probably might have your close family around you, but the sort of American audience, will it be the same sort of experience if you're there in Tokyo and you're looking around the sort of stadiums that are quarter full, or that sort of the atmosphere that sort of comes with the Olympics, with the opening night, with the torch lighting? If all that is sort of different, will it still be the same as sort of such, the Olympic sort of village going around, having to sort of self-isolate in your sort of hotel, not being able to interact or mix? Will it always feel like the sort of, I suppose, a detention sort of camp, as such, that you're there to compete, and then when you're up there, you're sort of you're within your sort of self sort of environment, and that US audience that travels mass every year to the Olympics, that they mightn't travel in their droves due to the restrictions and such? Will it be a new sort of an experience? And hopefully this vaccine does come in time, but if it doesn't, is that something that's going to be a different sort of mental challenge for you? And probably the biggest task of all heading into the Olympics is just not to have the real atmosphere at it.
Yeah, it will be extremely different not having the fans for sure, especially with the triple jump. We enjoy the clap. We enjoy keeping the crowd involved. This really adds to the energy. This really adds to the effort that we put in. It's going to be very difficult without being able to see friends and family in the stands. We at the end of the day, we don't know how it's going to look, but we know it's not going to be normal, or how traditionally they were accustomed to. I feel for those that this is their first games, and they wouldn't even know what it was like to have 60,000, roaring in the stands. My heart actually really goes out to them because I've had the privilege to experience that. But yeah, again, as when we first started to talk, it's just about adapting, evolving, and finding the safest ways to get back to a normal. And at the end, though it is not the traditional games that we're used to, it is still an opportunity to compete at the highest stage. And I hope that we have this opportunity this year.
Christian Taylor, an absolute pleasure talking to you today on the airwaves to reflect on what has been an iconic career so far, a career that is still ongoing, and no doubt about it, that record, I say, is bound to go in the next if it doesn't go in this year, it'll go in the next 2 or 3 years. Christian, an absolute pleasure talking to you, mate, and we wish you all the best, you and your loved ones, in the upcoming Olympics. Please God, it goes ahead, and thanks for taking your time to share your iconic career story with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Stay safe, and thank you to all the listeners.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers, Christian.
Bye.